be able to share from here.
It wants me to rotate. Crap.
Oh.
Isn't that a setting?
Let me see. I'm gonna check us out to see. Hello, everybody. I'm gonna see if we're sideways, and you can also post and say you're sideways. Because the phone is saying we are. Why is it not showing up?
Because it's on my phone.
But I'm tagged, so it should.
It is. You are tagged.
Whoops. We'll go to your page and see that way. Oh, we are sideways.
Dang it.
It is right.
My
Here.
apologies.
I can.
Needs to be a little taller. There we go.
Let's try this.
Yay.
Okay. That's so funny because it used to only do that if I shared into
Me
a group.
too. I know. I've never had that happen.
So, this is the ever-changing world of Facebook. You want to come in closer since we are...
Yes, and share to groups.
Yes. It's ma'am. Braveheart is right there. And then do you have... Yep, there we go. All right. That was
Yay,
quick
we did
and
it fast
easy.
today.
Yay. Okay. This is very close quarters here.
Good thing I like you.
Good thing we're good friends, right?
Yes.
Oh, we're always adapting. This is fun. Okay. So welcome to Braveheart Conversations. I'm so glad you're here this morning with us. Welcome wherever you're joining. We're here live every Thursday on Facebook. You can find us in our group, Braveheart Conversations. You can also find any of our replays in that group or Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, all the different places. And today we are going to be talking about trauma on children. So last week, if you remember, we talked about leaving a relationship where children are involved and that there's a lot of hardship in that. It's difficult to do. And this week, we really want to tackle and honor the topic of trauma in children that happens because of relationships. So you may be experiencing this as a parent. If you have children that maybe you are now having to co-parent, and that's actually, I believe, our next week's topic is co-parenting with an abuser or someone who's been really toxic to you and your children, because that's a very real reality. But today we want to really honor childhood development and how we have been impacted. I'm going to share a little bit of my personal experience. So we have some great wisdom in the room here today. I'm not a parent. However, I experienced a lot of trauma as a child. Marie has been a parent and has had to deal with trauma in her children. And as you've grown through relationships, learning how to adjust to that. And then I also want to bring a little bit of perspective as a mediator, where I've seen quite a few divorces happening as well. So we've got some different perspectives here. So Marie, why don't we start with, as a parent, from the parenting perspective, what has your experience been when you've left difficult relationships and then maybe, having to send the children back to that parent at times, or dealing with the grief that the children feel where maybe dad isn't as present as he was, or trying to understand why this happened?
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a tough one, you guys. I think part of it is seeing your child hurting. It's probably the most tender piece, especially because you see the hurt, you see the pain, and that they don't understand. They don't understand why their parents aren't together. They don't understand when fighting's going on, what's exactly.
Sorry.
They don't understand what's going on, especially if it's pretty rocky and the parent relationship is a little strained and there's emotions and feelings and a lot of tension. And kids feel that and they take it on themselves, and they feel that they have somehow caused this or been a part of this. And that's the tricky part about that relationship is navigating all of that. And so we will get into more detail later about some things that we can do. The main one is to have a lot of conversations with them and let them know consistently on a regular basis that it's not their fault what's going on, and that they're safe. And for me as a parent, to be, because I don't have control in that other relation or that other home, is for me to be as stable as possible, for me to hold my boundaries, for me to grow and learn as much as I can as a person, so that I'm autonomous and not relying on someone else for that parenting piece. So no matter what happens on that other side, I think that would be the number one thing. And getting the kids as much help as possible so that they can process their feelings, because they're so young and tender and they don't know. And sometimes they can't verbalize, especially depending on what the age is. So.
For sure, yeah. And I remember, just from a child's perspective, I remember going through those feelings where I was really attached to my dad. I really felt a strong bond with my dad, and yet he was an addict, and he had a really awful physical altercation with my mom. And I remember coming home from school one day, and my neighbor was there to pick me up, and the police were at my house, and I watched from the window as my dad was arrested for strangling my mom. And that was one of the last times I remember seeing him before he left to Montana, really to avoid a lot of legal trouble. And it was very confusing, and there was a lot of grief in that, and there was some embarrassment. I remember feeling embarrassed at school. My dad was in jail, and my dad had these problems, and so there's a lot to unpack as a child, and so there's a lot to process as a child. Then your parent is in the process of healing this relationship trauma also, right? And as an adult, I can see this. As an adult, I can really empathize with my mom and everything that she was going through, and how horrific that must have felt for her, and scary.
And on top of that, they're being moved home to home.
Yeah, and my situation was unique in the way that a lot of children are now going back and forth between homes, and in my case, my dad had a lot of his own demons that he was needing to address that were in his face, and parenting there just was not any room for parenting. So I wasn't shuffled back and forth between homes, but my mom did get remarried very quickly, and we had a whole nother chapter of a very different kind of abuse. We went into very, very extreme religion, and so I took on a lot of patriarchal programming, and I really I really sank into a lot of very deeply harmful beliefs and patterns that eventually really ended up developing into a lot of codependency for me and my own relationship issues. I mirrored a lot of things, right? We do that. We pick up what our parents show us, and so you would think that by seeing trauma that you wouldn't repeat it, right?
You would think, yep. No, we do it anyway.
That isn't the way it works. We are watching. We do pick up a lot as children. So, from my perspective, there was a lot of hurt. I didn't understand why I was losing my dad. I was sad about losing my dad, but I also was trying to reconcile, but my dad hurt my mom, and what do you do with that information? And then there's a lot of stuffing that happens. And I totally understand that this was a coping skill for my mom, for sure. Like the stuffing and just moving on. I remember, in my new family with my new siblings and my new dad, it was very much like pretending that we've always been a family, and there's no past family. And so this very like blatant denial that there was any past existence, I really felt that. And as a child, I think we pick up on the shame and the embarrassment of our parents. And that, I think, would be such a beautiful thing to move beyond. That as a culture and as a society, that we accept these very complicated family situations where maybe there aren't two moms or two dads, and there are past family relationships that are very valid, and there's mom and there's stepmom, and there's dad and there's stepdad, and so having a greater acceptance of these co-parenting relationships would be so very helpful for children moving forward, instead of just really trying to make everyone else comfortable by perpetuating this illusion. Because I do feel like once I moved into that new family situation, there was a lot of pressure to be in this illusion and suppress anything that was in the past.
Well, which makes it inauthentic and then hard to trust. It's really hard to trust anybody in that situation, especially if you're a kid. And, you've already witnessed that trust being broken when the abuse starts happening, right? Here's someone who's here supposed to protect us and love us, and they're harming our other parent, and then you're having to pretend the whole time on everything. And I had a similar situation. My dad was actually married 8 times, something like that, and it was just moving from one relationship to another with no skills, no, and he was he was addicted to alcohol, and it just, you don't cope well, you don't do things well, you don't treat people well, and you're under the influence all the time. It makes it really difficult to communicate, or really, you're checked out a lot of times, and so you're not really communicating. And so there's this constant flood of, like you said, a flood of emotions, and being very sensitive, and then you're stuffing it so that you're just feeling on the verge all the time of tears and explosion of emotion, and know where to put it.
Yep. I think what I can't stress enough is that as parents, our ability to heal, and our decision and our choice to heal our own patterns and wounds is the biggest mitigator of trauma in children. Is we will continue to put them through the pain and the trauma. We will re-traumatize them. The more
keep that pattern cycle of abuse continued.
Right. Because if marriage 8 had never
yeah.
And I'm not at all saying divorce is our wound. I don't believe it is. I think that putting ourselves through the same pattern, the same toxic patterns, are the problem. So I do think it's healthy to show children that when we leave unhealthy relationships, like, that's a big skill. That's a really very vital skill. But what we often are doing is we're just perpetuating going through multiple relationships, never actually bothering to heal the patterns or the things that are causing the problems. So I'm not at all saying that we need to avoid divorce at all costs, because honestly, I think that we're in a time period where divorce wasn't an option before, and so we had to put up with rape and cheating and drug addiction and all sorts of really awful behaviors, abuse in many different forms. It just wasn't ever an option for women to leave. And so I am very grateful that we have the right now to empower ourselves to leave relationships that are harmful. However, we also have the burden of healing the wounds that exist in us, not only for ourselves, but also for our children and the rest of the world. Because when we heal, we really go a great lengths in healing others as well. So
that would be my number one skill. I think until we heal this person and take responsibility for ourselves and empower ourselves, because that's something that the kids are watching too, is how am I handling this? How am I learning and growing as a person and functioning in my relationships? That's what's going to help the kids feel secure. How am I making my house a stable, safe, and environment to learn and play and grow as well? Because those are just as vital as anything else. And instead of continuing that pattern, and if I don't take the time to look at that shadow side of myself, how did I end up in a relationship that was teaching me, right? And how do I keep going in these patterns so that I can stop them, and so that I am the parent, so that I'm the adult that I really want my children to have access to. I want them to have a healthy parent and a productive, and I want them to have healthy relationships too. And until I heal this relationship, that cycle's going to keep happening.
Absolutely. And I think, I want to clarify when I say healing relationship patterns, because often what women are picking up when I say that is that you have a shitty picker and you need to learn how to pick better people. That is not what I'm saying. I really believe that it is our belief systems that we've picked up that are the patterns that we get to heal. So when I say belief systems, I mean things like, what the hell do you believe about unconditional love? And how is that actually creating a lot of toxic cycles in your relationship? Let me clarify that a little bit. So for me, I believed that unconditional love meant tolerating all behavior from my partner, and that marriage required unconditional love, which meant unconditional tolerance. And you can see where this leads is, it doesn't matter what abuse or horrible behavior is happening, you will tolerate, you will put up with it because that is love. So coming from that belief system that was a wound for me, until I healed that wound, I would continue to perpetuate the cycle. And that belief system got to change for me in my clarity and my understanding that unconditional love doesn't mean tolerance. It means full acceptance of who they are and what their behavior is telling you about who they are. And my presence isn't actually required for love. So I can fully love someone and accept who they are and say, I love you, I totally respect your path, and it's not a good match for me.
Exactly.
So that truth allowed me massive healing in my relationships and breaking cycles and patterns. So it is going back to identifying what beliefs I'm holding. It's not a matter of beating myself up and hating myself for whatever relationship decisions I've made. It is coming to the root of these belief systems that have kept me there. It's not about judgment. I don't hate myself for having an incorrect view about an unconditional love. That's part of the programming that is millennia deep, right? That is ancestral programming. And I don't have to carry shame about having it, but I do get to heal it. And I do get to say, man, my life is a hell of a lot better when that belief system gets to be upgraded. So I think a lot of us are stuck in this shame,
and blame.
Yeah, blaming myself.
Blaming the other person.
Exactly. And that's another way that we get to stop putting children in the middle, is that when I am unhealed in that pattern, what inevitably ends up happening is I make the other person bad and wrong. And so then, I start complaining about the narcissistic ex. And then I've made them, they're on this side, they're bad and wrong. I'm the good, empathetic person. And I've spoken many times about how I think that this polarization is really damaging. This is not about good and bad. We all have a lot of programming to heal. And I have patterns to take accountability for and responsibility for. And I'm not saying that people are not responsible for their behavior. Abusive behavior does get to be called out as abusive, and there is 100% accountability and responsibility that gets to be taken. And I get to take 100% responsibility and accountability for allowing things to continue. And that is absolutely as much of a problem, as much of a problem as narcissistic tendencies, or, I really don't even like the word narcissist, because I think that we're overusing it, but it's also labeling classic abuse as a mental illness, which I have serious problems with. So anyway, I just think when we are making the other person bad and wrong, we're damaging the children in a whole different way.
Exactly.
Instead of saying we all have these patterns to heal, and unfortunately Daddy isn't on the same page right now, and unfortunately I love Daddy, and Daddy is a great person, but he has some things that are unhealed that makes it not a match for me to hang out with him. Or he's chosen a different path that isn't a match for me, and so I just have chosen not to be with him. That's a whole different message than your daddy abandoned us because he's a horrible person. And that's what happens when we don't heal our own patterns. So anyway, that's a really long soapbox.
No, it was great because I agreed with so much of that. It's back to our original thing. What honors us honors everyone. Even honoring someone that you feel it's respecting that other person. It's honoring them and knowing that they're on their path and I'm on my path, and we all have healing and growing. And also, when I'm labeling or shoving things off onto that other person, all I'm doing is shaming and blaming them and not owning and being responsible for my part in it. And how am I going to grow from here? We're going to all make mistakes along the way. Each relationship is going to teach us something. And what this has taught us is that maybe this relationship is not as effective or a good match as you say it, as another relationship might be. It may mean that another relationship might be really great for that other person. But what I really wanted to say is it's 100% my responsibility to grow and learn, educate myself, get out there, get the therapy or help, or get a coach, a mediator, whatever, so that I can heal this wound and help my children better. Be the best parent I can be, because I have no control in that other home, what's happening. It's up to me to give them that that healing, nourishing environment to grow and flourish. And I don't ever have to say anything about the other person, ever. Because kids are smart. They'll figure it out.
And they're
themselves.
Watching your behavior.
They're watching my behavior. They're watching the other person's behavior.
Yeah. So the quote that comes to mind is, "Don't look for healing at the feet of those who broke you."
I love it.
And I think that we're telling our children indirectly to do that when we are saying if they changed their behavior, everything would be fine. Because it's all blame on them. If they would be different, we'd be fine. And no, we don't need them to be better to be fine. That's the truth. And I don't need any of my abusers or people that have wronged me in my life to fix their behavior for me to be better. I just get to move forward and write the end to my story, right? I get to write the next chapter. I'm the one holding the pen. They're not. So we get to remember that. We get to remember who's holding the pen, who's writing the story. You are writing the story, not your abuser. They're writing their story to, their own story. And that gets to be a fit for you or not. And that's really as far as that decision goes. But you aren't reliant. You are not at their mercy to have a happy, healthy life. That's on you. So
we have a lot of comments.
Yeah, I did see we had a question. Okay, so how do you get through mediation with your abuser when you have a no contact order? Seems like mediation will be a waste of time. Actually, that is incorrect. I've mediated cases before with a no contact order. Actually, there's a slight difference between no contact and a protection order. So every divorce in Idaho, you'll have a no contact. It's just part of the process. That's a little different than a protection order. Protection orders are a lot more significant. And there sometimes are caveats there that will say, a mediation is an exception and you can have contact during mediation. However, there are some situations that are legitimately very dangerous. And in those situations, I will mediate separately. And I don't want to make this all about mediation because that's not quite the topic here. We could go into that more on another podcast, but you're more than welcome to reach out for more information specifically about mediation. But mediation, I just want to put a plug as a self-advocacy piece. if you are considering as a woman who's been in an abusive relationship, mediation is a way for you to speak up for yourself in a way that the court system really can't do for you. So the court system has a very cut and dry answer for every situation. It's all the same, one size fits all.
And it's a written agreement, right?
Well, both of them. You come out with a written agreement. But in mediation, you have more of a voice to say what you specifically want. And mediation agreements can very much be outside of what the norm or the laws would be. It's really more needs-based rather than rights-based. And that's the best way I can describe mediation versus the court system. Is the court system is all about rights. Mediation is very much about needs and trying to find an overlap between the needs of both parties and find a good fit individually for that family instead of just the one size fits all. So I don't want to go into a lot of mediation because that's not the purpose of this podcast, but it is a great platform to self-advocate as a woman, and I highly recommend it for you to have a voice for yourself. I want to make sure I'm not missing any other questions. I have a restraining order too. Yeah, so that makes a big difference. I would just see what your specific restraining order says. And then, yes, there is value in mediating separately. How do you help yourself heal and your children when you went through a divorce with an alcohol abusive person, then moved straight into another relationship that involved abuse towards them and myself? We are all struggling with anger and feelings from moving on and on our own now. Yeah, so this is something I feel there's a huge pattern here. I'd like to address one piece of it and then I'll turn it over to Marie because I know that she's got some things to say about it as well. The big piece that I see is this. So as women, we get to heal our masculine wound, which is we are relying on the masculine outside of ourselves to be our provider. Mm-hmm. And when we do that, when we make ourselves dependent on the masculine outside of ourselves, we give up our freedom. We give up our autonomy. We, in essence, become a child looking for a parent to take care of us. We must stop that. So when I see women who cycle through abusive relationships, there's almost always a financial element where they feel like they can't make it on their own. And so therefore they find another man to support them. And I'm not saying that is the entire dynamic, but that's a big piece because we are carrying the belief that we are incapable, that we are helpless, and that we must have a partner to make it. This is not true. It's bullshit. And it is a deep programming that we're holding, and we get to level up in this area and know that the masculine inside of us, our warrior inside of us, is capable of providing and protecting, right? We get to start requiring more out of the jobs that we take, what they will pay us. I don't accept jobs that pay me small amounts of money. I won't do that. And that feels uncomfortable for a lot of women. And we all get to level up in our requirements to access our labor. So that's my soapbox in that particular piece. Marie, I'm sure you have some other.
I would have said exactly the same thing. It is up to me to not depend on that other person. And it is a healing of the masculine wound because at some point we felt like we couldn't do it without a man. And I'm just coming from the girl's perspective that for some reason I could not manage this family, help this family, support this family on my own, and constantly needing that other person. That's what makes women go back. Oftentimes the financial piece, it's also that support, security, all those masculine things that are, we think we have to get something from that other person. And the sooner that you can get support outside of that relationship in other ways, there's forms in the community, there are ways that you can empower yourself and advocate for yourself, and it's the self-autonomy And that was the word that I had in my head right when you said that. It's my autonomy that keeps me from continuing to go back to a difficult relationship or continue to go into a new one, and or go back and repeat that pattern over and over again. It's somehow I'm going to get something from this other person. The other part I want to address is there's a piece of us, and this is our conflicting values, that really, really wants our family and really loves and believes in family and wants that for our children. And it's a wonderful, lovely ideal to have, but not at no cost, which is what we were talking about too. You have to own this person first before you can get into that healthy relationship and build the family. And until you do that, you're just chasing after something that's never going to show up, because I'm always looking for it outside of myself and not inside. Boy, we both got riled up on that one.
Yeah.
It's us. It's always about us. I have 100% responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. So really, when you heal yourself, yes, you're putting your children in a much better position. And Nicole, I'm definitely not saying that in a way to judge you at all for jumping into multiple relationships.
I've done it.
Me too.
Lots of times.
And so what I'm saying is, when you see that pattern cropping up, get curious about why, and you're going to repeat the pattern until you heal it. So you will keep jumping into relationship after relationship if you continue holding the belief that you're not good enough and that you can't capable. Do it on your own. Yeah. You aren't capable, and you're helpless and you're fragile, because that's a belief system I know that I picked up from a really young age, because I was told over and over and over, I don't know how many times, women are the weaker vessel.
You need a man.
Yep. The men are the earners. They're the breadwinners. You need them. They're the leaders. You're not built to be a leader. All of that bullshit was what I grew up with. And I still sometimes carry that message in my subconscious. So I'm very aware of it today. And so I will call myself out when I am telling myself things like, you have to do this, you have to take this job, you can't survive without settling, you have to be in this relationship, stop being a bitch to money. That's what I tell myself a lot. Stop being a bitch to money. That's not an option anymore. You have a choice to either make money your bitch, or you can be a bitch to money. And that is my mindset today. So I have that choice. It was not a choice that I saw before. I saw myself as a victim of it instead of being empowered by it. But that truly is a choice. And when we don't make that choice, we do put ourselves at the mercy of a lot of relationships. And so I don't think that financial is the only piece of that programming and that decision, but it is a big part of it. So we get to look at that gender programming and that financial programming. And for the people out there who like to avoid healing their financial wounds, take heed right here, because this is how it shows up. It does show up in your relationships. It wreaks havoc.
Because money is a relationship.
It is. Yeah.
Well, and what Nicole said, you're doing a really good job. It is holding several jobs at one time, and that's really hard. I've done it myself, and it's tough. But just know that it's not forever. It's not forever. And just keep seeking outside support as well. And then those days that you are kind of not on yourself and you need someone, find that trusted friend that says, just get out of this. Get out of this funk.
Yeah.
You're better than this.
Because even while I'm telling you to be autonomous and to own your own authority, we also are built for community. We are built as social beings. And so even though I am saying, yes, you get to own your own authority, don't forget that there are way other ways to have support and a foundation outside of just a romantic relationship. And we turn to that a lot, but really we need to learn how to have bigger relationships with our female supporters and our community, because that's where we truly find our way through this, right? We find the connections that do build our independence instead of tear it down. And a lot of the time, our romantic relationships are tearing it down, not maybe intentionally, but we're all running a lot of programming. So many times we're showing up in relationships with men who have a lot of programming also around the belief that they're supposed to be the leaders and that, you know, you're not supposed to be financially independent, and all of these other belief systems that just end up perpetuating abuse and toxic relationship patterns. So I want to make sure I'm addressing. I always felt very independent growing up, said I would never depend on a man, never married either of my exes, and stood up for myself all the time, but still fell into abusive relationships. Yeah, and so this, I actually hear this quite a bit, where someone will say, well, I was always really independent and this just doesn't make sense. Why am I doing this? And this is where we fall prey to that cultural programming that we don't even know is running script. So as soon as we jump into a relationship, then all of a sudden we do find that we default to, oh, the man is the leader. Oh, I'm supposed to share my resources. Oh, you know, I'm supposed to give up my power. I'm making him insecure by bringing in too much money, or whatever the bullshit stories that we bring in, but we bring them in and they wreak havoc. And so again, healing those beliefs and patterns is absolutely fundamental to stopping the cycle and stopping the trauma that's happening in your families and with your children. So I hope that gave some good information.
Well, each relationship is teaching us something, and we're leveling up and moving up. So be compassionate towards yourself too. You're learning and you're growing. And
totally. Okay, so I did want to address just I do question guys' intentions now, especially when they are overly nice and caring. So I just really want to stress that this is not about in any way demonizing men or making them bad and wrong. This is about a collective programming that hits both men and women. We didn't wake up as babies and say, I'm going to choose to have patriarchal programming growing up. It's just, that is what we were all taught. And so when I see men operating from that framework, it's not a matter of saying, oh my gosh, you're so awful. But it's just acknowledging, oh, I see that programming. And even though they may not be aware of it, I know the harm that can be done from that programming. So if we can make that less personal, it's not about hating them. It's not about hating their belief system. It is knowing the power it has to damage. It is knowing within myself, I know when that crops up in me, how damaging that is. And I also can spot it in other people. And I can see very clearly when people have done the work to heal it. And that's what we're looking for. Is it's not a matter of making people bad and wrong. It's not a matter of fixing your picker so that you can weed out the bad people.
There's no bad people.
It's not bad people. It's being able to spot the programming that causes a lot of damage and harm. And some people are really willing to look at it, examine it, get curious, and heal it. And some people are not ready to do that yet. And so the people that are not ready to do that yet
aren't
are
a good
just
fit
not
anymore.
a good fit. Exactly. It's not about them being bad and wrong. We're all going at our own pace to heal all of the programming and stuff that we've been brought up with. And there's no judgment to someone who isn't ready to take a hard look at that, because it's a really hard thing to do. But I do get to say that the people I want in my space are the people that are there. They're brave enough and ready enough to stare those demons in the face and really do some intense healing work. So.
And just be encouraged that there are people out there and they are growing and they are learning, and expand that vision, because it's not an all or nothing. All relationships are going to get me to this spot. It's just growing, and just believe that there are people out there that are ready to grow with you,
and the faster you let go of the ones who aren't, the more space
there
you'll have.
Go. This is so true
for the people that are there. So that's been so true for me. As the faster I've been willing to let go of people who don't match the level of growth or the commitment to curiosity
or the
and
mutuality, like mutual respect, mutual power, mutual. So you want that person where you're sharing the power, you're sharing respect, because that's how you navigate those tricky waters and get over those patriarchal patterns.
Yep.
You do it together.
Yep.
So
Yep, accountability is huge. Find the people that will call you out. Find the people that love it when you call them out. You know, those are the relationships that are really juicy. So
they are.
thank you so
So
much
grateful.
for being here to discuss this with us today. This has been a really fun conversation and super vital. So I just want to give you so much thanks and gratitude from the bottom of our hearts for being here this morning. And we hope that you'll join us again next week. Again, next week we're going to be talking about co-parenting with an abuser. That should also be a fun, juicy topic. This whole month we're talking about family relationships and co-parenting and all of those yummy things with kids. So
you're doing a good job out there. You're doing a good job. Hang in there.
It's no joke. It's a really big task, and I just want to honor that in you. There's no right or wrong
Not
way.
an easy one.
I hope that you find a few things here that really resonated for you. If you didn't, like something, leave it out. Take what you like, leave the rest, always. If you have any additional questions for us, challenges, topics you'd like us to discuss, please reach out to us individually. You can reach me at defytheaverage@gmail.com or Marie
at mariesgold.com. Yeah, we welcome those.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I hope you will join us again next week. We will be here next Thursday morning around 10 a.m. and make it a great week, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.